happy Sunday. We're gonna use a blanket and a wall as our props. And let's start. Let's start on our backs. We'll get our blanket and we'll go from shelf fold to hot dog fold. And we're gonna lay our spine down on that. You may want to elongate. So if you know that your torso has some extra length, you could, instead of going from shelf fold, take that to a towel length and then get into our hot dog style blanket. And we're just gonna head right down on that. Spine aligned. Little pull from that medial line to the lateral edges. Try to find a spot where your palms can be up, whether they're down or at ski or at cactus, just so that you can get some external rotation of the shoulders. Note if the lumbar is a little spicy, if you're feeling some discomfort in the lumbar, you can take the prop out from underneath you, right? Starting with a back bend may not be ideal for you, depending on what you have going on. And then note that the legs can be extended or bent, whatever feels most beneficial for you, once again. And we'll just start to slow things down here. Deep. Full and nourishing breaths. Really think about that capacity to nourish your body on the inhale. And then I always just like to remind that we nourish the vegetative portion of our planet with the exhale. Inhale, we receive that nourishment. Exhale, we give that nourishment. We'll give ourselves just 60 more seconds here to settle in and receive. And as it feels appropriate, let's bring our knees to a bent position if they're not already there. And then we'll just allow the knees to fall to one side or the other, rolling off that prop. And we can set that to the side for a moment. Let's roll straight over onto our bellies. And find your way into a Sphinx alignment. So elbows directly underneath the shoulders, palms down, little back bend, round 2 here. If we're in this shape and it's not feeling like the jam, maybe the lumbar is still barking at us, hands can stack and we can just go forehead right to that stacked hand space. If we're feeling like Sphinx is working, energize the hands down. Feel the glutes and quads engage in a way where the low back feels protected. And then find a positioning for your head where you feel like you're getting some expansiveness and where we're not feeling any sensation of compression in the lumbar. So if you're feeling compression in the lumbar, lowering the head, squeezing the glutes more can also assist in this, but it is a recharge class, so maybe additional glute squeeze isn't the solution that maximally benefits us here. And we'll just give ourselves 30 seconds here, a real short little stop in Sphinx. And when it feels appropriate, just for the moment, let's bring our left elbow towards heart center so that it can become a little bit more stabilizing. So we're looking to use back bend a little bit here just to set up the neck shape. We're going to take a little sensation into the quad. That anterior leg tissue is something that gets overlooked a lot in our yoga practices. So let's add that. Bending the right knee, so the bottom of the right foot can point towards the ceiling. You can also bring that more towards the glute. We're going to reach our right hand back and see if we can capture that. If we can't capture that, we can use our blanket prop to kind of create a little lasso, and then we have a little bit of extra space there. If neither of those is working, wonderful. Just go leg up. That'll be enough. And then we're going to release that pressure so the hands can come back, or the left hand can come back out. We can release our forehead, and we're just seeing if we can get some quad activation there. You get in this shape and it feels like nothing. Heck yeah, that's what we're looking for. You can add more by lifting the quad off of the mat. So that would just be a upper leg lift straight up. That will activate that quad musculature. Again, though, that's a lot of musculature to have going. So that doesn't feel like it's the jam for you in this recharge class. Just find something that you can relax into. As you settle here, and we won't be here for a super long time, but as you settle here, kind of think about the distal, middle, and proximal portions of this quad musculature. So we have that high knee attachment, we have this low hip attachment, and then we have the kind of soft point in the musculature that is the furthest distance between the two attachment points. Think of all three of those points as areas in which sensation can maximize. And as you spend more time here, as you spend more cycles of breath here, think about the exhale as the opportunity to release those points in particular. So instead of thinking as this huge sheath of musculature, think about those 3 points: knee attachment, hip attachment, middle of the musculature, and see if you can get them to relax. We'll give ourselves just 15 more seconds here on this first side. And as it feels appropriate, you can release that right leg. Let's come back into Sphinx just so that we can reset. The right arm is going to come more towards that heart center space just so that it provides a little bit more stability. And then we'll make the determination whether we want to use additional prop or we can grab that ankle or foot with the left hand. And then we're headed back into our position of ease. some of us, ease may not be the right word, right? This is a huge piece of musculature that we're targeting. And so it can be uncomfortable. Use the connection to your breath, that ability to downregulate your nervous system response, to relax those 3 points within the musculature. Knee attachment, hip attachment, middle of the sheath. And we just find our way into that ease. About 60 more seconds here on this second side. When it feels appropriate, you can relax that second side. We'll slide the hands underneath the shoulders here, and we're just going to press straight back into child's pose. So no pause. Just think about settling all the way back into the back end of this shape. Lumbar into lumbar extension, right? So lumbar bend into lumbar extension. As you settle back here, remember that you have the ability to play with core engagement to get that structural elongation of the lumbar spine. So we can use our core musculature to help bring the lumbar into a more integrated position of length. Keep the cycles of breath really fluid and easy. And we're going to give ourselves 60 more seconds here. And as it feels appropriate for you, let's bring ourselves into tabletop. We're gonna just articulate the spine a little bit here through some cat-cows before we get our legs up the wall. So good solid base. Think about using that lumbar space that we've created, and with an exhale, round the spine into flexion. Tuck the chin, tuck the tailbone, feel the middle of the back work into that lumbar arch. And then inhale, drop the belly, lift the chin, lift the tailbone. Exhale, reverse, middle of the back lifts, tailbone tucks, chin tucks, big flexion space. Really think about arching, and then inhale, drop the belly, lift the tailbone, lift the chin. Back to neutral. And let's find our way to our wall. Using the wall here as an additional prop for lumbar elongation. So for neutralizing the lumbar spine. So get one of your hips as close to the wall as is possible or comfortable. And then let's just swing straight up into a traditional supported inversion. Really think about putting the legs into their proper alignment. So you can see when I swung up, I kind of went into a natural default. Think about having 2 fist distance, having the hips plugged in so that proximal femoral head plugged into the hip socket. The hip joint itself, right, the hinge in the middle of the body, really tucked into that wall crease. And then find a spot where your palms can be up once again so we get back into that external shoulder rotation. And let's breathe into this space. So these 2 very prominent trading villages. A good distance and a rugged path between the 2. Because each of these villages has different expertise. The trade between them is fairly prolific. There is, of course, industry just around the trade and the transportation of goods between these 2 villages. And at the time, the primary means of transport are these like very huge, oversized, rudimentary backpack-like things. Imagine what we might think of as someone on an overnight camping trip where they have all of their stuff attached to their back, but instead of being the lightest of the light materials, these are generally heavy and bulky. And it takes quite a great deal of strength and skill to be in the transport industry. It's incredibly physically demanding work with incredibly high expectations. And that's where we find one of these transport workers carrying a huge, hulking cargo load on his back as he starts out from one village to the next. Give yourself just 60 more seconds here in this very traditional supported inversion. Remember how the inversion impacts the body by changing the way our circulatory system operates. Our circulatory system is optimized to push blood up against gravity from the feet back to the heart. And now we've made that job very, very easy. When it feels appropriate, let's bend the knees and bring the bottoms of the feet together. So we create kind of an inverted butterfly. And then allow your palms to come on that medial edge of the legs. And so here, we're going to apply a slight bit of pressure from the palms, the inner thighs. If you can lock out the elbows, the musculature doesn't have to work, right? Assuming you don't have hypermobility in the elbows. If you do, you know you have to get to the point where you have that stability, and that requires some additional work on your end. But for those of us with a normal range of elbow mobility, if we can lock them out, the musculature can deactivate and the structure of the arms itself can take the work. As you're pressurizing into the thighs or impacting the medial line of the hips, note how the lumbar responds to that. How the musculature supporting the neutrality of the spine responds to that. And see what you can do with that response by offering shifts and changes within the breath cycle. We'll give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. I know this can be a lot of work if we're not fully locked out. It can be pretty good amount of work if we are locked out. When it feels appropriate, let's go legs back up the wall, and then we're going to let the legs come out wide here. This will be a much shorter duration, but just a little of this posterior chain activation on the medial edge. Again, you can note how activating this inner hamstring now impacts the lumbar. Sometimes this creeps up into that lumbar thoracic union space. Relax into the back with your breath. And when it feels appropriate, we'll bring our legs back to neutral. You can bend the knees, or you can let the legs fall to one side or the other, whatever feels most appropriate for you. And let's press ourselves up into a brief little seat so we can reconnect with our blanket prop. Bringing that back to a shelf fold and then going hot dog one time. We're going to put that roughly the top third of the mat. We're headed here into a little mid-back adjustment. So we want enough room for our scapula up to connect with the mat. And so as you are thinking about this placement, think about having the scapula on the mat. So the shoulder blades are fully supported on the mat and the shoulder girdle is completely neutral. And then letting your arms come to cactus T or by your sides, whatever feels most appropriate for you. Again, recommending palms up. Settling back into your breath. Kind of a hot pot notification here, right? Is that hot spot notification here. That thoracic joint, right, has a lot of musculature that transverses the lumbar and thoracic spine. And that joint has a little bit of additional movement in the spine, so it can create some dysfunction. As you're lying here and we're working into that joint, very possible that musculature gets relatively angry. If it feels like it's too much, if it feels like it's cramping and locking down, much better to just pull the prop out than to fight against it. If you feel like you're not really getting anything, you could double that blanket over again, so you could make that a thicker prop underneath you. So just think about that musculature that crosses between the lumbar and thoracic spine and what would be the most appropriate way to address that with the prop that you're utilizing. So as this man heads out with this huge load of cargo, every step has to be intentional, because a lean too far in either direction, he's going to topple over. And this is a path that, without a heavy bulking load may require intentionality in your steps, because it is rocky, it is rugged, and it is uneven. As he's making his way, he's constantly keeping an eye on the sun as it is traveling across the horizon on its path behind the horizon. And while the going is slow, steps are plodding. He feels like if he's able to continue the pace he's on, he'll make it to his delivery site before the gates are closed, sundown. And so he keeps putting off breaks. He's scared to take a sip of water for fear that while he's jostling for the water bottle, he's going to topple over. And so the day's progressing on. He's getting weaker and weaker. And he gets over this kind of rugged mountainy range and he drops down into a more forested part of the path. Thankfully, the ground becomes a bit more level. And so his steps are a bit more fluid. Just as he's about to leave this more forested section back into another rugged and rocky section, he comes across this very old, very frail woman. And she's struggling to carry this bundle of firewood. And they meet eyes, and he can see kind of some desperation in her eyes. And in that split second, he has to make a decision. Does he stop and try to help this woman, or does he carry on? Without even kind of thinking about it, his brain does all the calculations. He looks at the sun. He looks at this old woman. He looks at the bundle of firewood she's attempting to carry. And he realizes there's no way she can do it. He undoes his pack. He sets it down. He goes over and he helps the woman. He unburdens her from the stack of firewood and asks her where she's going. I'm trying to make it back to my little cottage. It's just off the road here. We'll give ourselves 60 more seconds. And when it feels appropriate, let's press down into our toe mounds and heels just enough to slide that prop out from underneath us, allowing the spine to re-engage with the neutrality of the mat. Let's take our blanket from back to shelf fold and then into a towel length. And then we'll just roll that little supported butterfly coming up here. The spine is ideally very open and receptive right now. So we're going to set that by taking the blanket just over the ankles, tucking it underneath that lateral edge. Oh, and just finding your way into this ease. This woman's little cottage is much further off the road than the man had expected. And so the time dwindles away. They eventually arrive. He puts all of the firewood away for her, and she thanks him and offers to make him a meal. And he glances out this little window into the fading sun. He declines the meal and hurries back to his cargo. One kind of note here is we want the lumbar to be really neutral. So opening up this medial line really makes the body want to go into that extension arch. Really think about what you can do to keep the lumbar neutral. Core engagement is like the primary way that I always talk about, right? But we could also relax. Right? It's possible to find enough ease within the body that the spine relaxes into the neutrality of the prop beneath us. And so play between that desire or need to engage the core to find neutral and the willingness to let the musculature be at ease. And find your way into those fluid, easy breaths. Give ourselves about 90 more seconds here. It feels appropriate for you. Bring our knees back to neutral. Let the blanket find its way out of the way. And add a little dynamic sway to the knees. Just letting them travel from side to side. Adding in lateral capacity, right? So we don't really often think of restorative or recharge classes as linear. But I think when you start to move into this rotation, you may feel just how linear this class has been, right? We've been very neutrally aligned. And so as we start to play with our rotational capacities here, think back to those release points on the quad musculature and translate that into this Quadratus Lumborum musculature. And so while we twist, when we get into points where we feel some activity, think about if you can use your breath to release those anchor points and that midpoint, that weakest point of the musculature. And the next time that the knees fall over towards the left, let's let them pause there, bringing a level of static engagement to the twists. And using that awareness of our breath and its capacity to create release, to continually soften. And so eventually he gets back to his cargo, very carefully, very tediously straps it back to his back and leaves the forest for this more rugged area, kind of the climb up to the delivery site village. At this point, he's racing against hope as the sun is fading faster than he can make up for. And yet with devotion to that consciousness of each step, he's moving relatively swiftly. So swift, in fact, that he makes up enough ground to arrive at the village in time to see them closing the gates for the night. And so he's now locked out without shelter for the evening. There's, of course, a rainstorm that rolls through. Not something that these cargo carriers are unprepared for. He takes out a tarp-like structure and places it over the cargo so it won't be damaged. He himself has to sit out in the elements. When it feels appropriate, knees come back to neutral. I'm gonna let the knees fall over to the second side, the right side. And so all night he's thinking about how he's going to be scolded for the late delivery. He's wondering if he should tell the story of helping the old woman or if that will make it worse. When the gates finally do open in the morning, he scurries in. Appropriate for you. We'll bring our knees back to neutral. Let the spine reintegrate at neutral. And then ask yourself if there's anything that your body would benefit from that you might need or want prior to Shavasana. If there is, let's offer that to ourselves now. If you have everything you need, if you're ready for stillness, and let's drift our way into that shape now. And so as he makes his delivery, he prepares to be scalded. To his surprise, the business owner greets him with a smile. He says, "I heard what you did for the old woman in the woods. That was a very kind and very good thing. And he pays this cargo transporter a little bit extra and sends him on his way. Just finding your version of stillness, your version of Shavasana.
starts making his way back to his village. He comes across this old woman. And to his astonishment, she's handing out food. She's lifting this heavy pot. She's working with all these people. And he looks at her, and she doesn't look frail. She looks strong, radiant. Bewildered, he asks, what are you? Who are you? She looks back at him with this huge smile. She says, I'm a reflection of your heart. The burdens you carry, we carry, everyone carries, are not lightened by strength, but by the choices we make. You did the right thing, and doing the right thing is never the wrong thing. We'll start to bring some movement into our fingers and our toes, to our wrists, our ankles, our knees, elbows, shoulders, hips, neck, head, jaw, eyes, tongue. Eventually, the entirety of the body will move. And through that movement, we'll transition from the shapes we are in back into a seat. From the seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes closed. Utilize our next inhale to bring our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that doing the right thing is never the wrong thing? See how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice, and for being you. Namaste. Sunday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here today. No practice tomorrow for the holiday. I hope you have a beautiful day and week, and we'll do this again next Sunday. Love the heck out of you. Wow.